All right, just got a few people rolling in. We had gotten a message that some people were having trouble with the link. So I wanted to start right on time. We'll give it another 60 seconds and then we'll get going.
Hi, Nate.
How's it going?
Hanging in there. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started, guys. It's 12:32, and we've got a tight 30 minutes. Hopefully, we'll have some more folks that make it in as we get going. So I'd like to welcome everybody to our 30-minute Agile workshop today. Thanks for joining us. I know everybody's busy, so our goal is to make this as efficient and beneficial part of your day as possible. My name is Nate Camp. I'm one of the managing partners of Curate. I'm going to start by giving you a 30-second overview of Curate and mention a few housekeeping items that we can get going. And then I'll introduce Richard. Do me a favor, there's a chat button at the bottom of the Zoom window. If you could click on that and enter any questions that you've got or burning concerns that you want Richard to answer, and he'll do his best to answer that during the presentation. We'll have some time afterwards to communicate as well. Curate Partners is a boutique professional services and staffing firm founded in 2014. We specialize in digital product, data and analytics, and agile consulting. We've got a perfect 5-star Glassdoor rating. We've been recognized by Inc. Magazine, Boston Business Journal, and staffing industry analysts who have rated us best places to work for the last 4 years, and most recently in 2020, fastest growing technology firm in the US. Finding, attracting, and retaining purple squirrels, which is a hard to find top tier talent, is one of our core values. Richard Lovell is one of our purple squirrels. He leads our Agile practice, where we help organizations in their Agile journey, whether through the Agile Jump Start program for organizations who are ready to begin their journey, assessments and roadmaps for Agile organizations that are not seeing the ROI from their journey, or coaching, training, and even staffing support. Richard has been with us since our inception 7 years ago. He's led Agile engagements at CVS, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Fidelity, and many more. He joins us today to discuss the benefits of Agile. We're going to keep the meeting brief, I promise. I'll get you out of here by 1 o'clock, and we'll address as many questions as possible. We'll also provide contact information to continue the conversation after the presentation. Again, some quick housekeeping. Please remain muted until the end of the presentation. Again, questions, drop them in the direct message and or DM, I guess as the kids call it these days. And I'll address them with Richard if we have time. Thanks again. And I'm going to kick it to Richard. And Richard, I guess not to steal your thunder, but the main reason to move to Agile is because it's trendy and everyone is doing it, correct?
Well, not quite, but the main reason to do Agile is because it works. So let's get started here. So one of my big things about Agile, it's about teams. And great quote from one of my favorite basketball players, Michael Jordan, talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships. And if anybody ever watched any Bulls games, you'll know what I'm talking about. So with that, let's give a quick agenda. We've done our introductions. I'll do a quick overview. We'll go through the customers, what's good for the business, what's good for the finance people, and why it's good for the technical management's perspective, and then we'll go into questions. So what are the questions we're trying to answer today for you? How are your customer satisfaction scores? Are they kind of okay? Are they stellar? Are they not stellar? As project managers or owners of a piece of the business or a product line or something like that, are the projects keeping you up at night? Are they all behind schedule? How's your budget doing? Do you get a ton of calls after you do a new release because stuff isn't working, or there are bugs, or people don't understand it? All that kind of stuff is the stuff we want to answer. Is your developer turnover high? That's a good sign that it's not a great place to work. And one of the things that Agile does for you is make the work environment a lot more pleasant. So why Agile? So this comes from the Standish Group. Standish Group has been doing a survey, I think, for like certainly the last 15 years on what happens between agile or more progressive development environments, and waterfall. And the surveys that they've done every year, it shows, improvements in the agile world because people are doing agile better. And what you see is that, 42% of agile projects are successful, 50% are challenged, and 8% fail. In the waterfall side of the world, it's a little bit different and not quite so pleasing if you're on the wrong end of it. You've got to sit in front of your manager for your annual review and explain why 21% of the projects failed. So you get into the good old blame game, which I've seen happen a lot, where all the fingers start going like that. Always fun, but not productive. So here's a piece from McKinsey, and it talks about customer sat, your operational performance, which covers the whole sort of how well you perform, and then employee engagement. And these are kind of fundamental pieces that you see the benefits of when you have a good agile practice. You get better employee satisfaction ratings, people stay longer, they gain better domain expertise, they write better code because they've been around a while and they know what's going on. But when you've got high turnover, one of the things that people usually fail to remember is it costs a lot to replace them. Even if they're a contractor, they've got time, they have to have time to get up to speed. You have to have people cover for them. So the productivity always, and I've never seen it not be the case, where productivity goes down when someone leaves, because they take that domain expertise with them, they take the knowledge of the application they've been developing with them, and it never gets handed over properly. As much as we try to do transitions and we have all these sort of fancy words for it, never really works. So you end up with trying to cover for those people and trying to fill in the holes that they've left. Customer satisfaction, fundamental piece of agile. We listen to our customers, that's what we do. From the operational performance, we do it faster. We do it with better visibility, and we only build what's needed. So a couple of these slides, the next slide is really all about the big picture of what Agile can do for you. So there's a ton of stuff on this page, and there's more, right? But I picked the ones that I think are the most important. You get less waste. You get your money back faster. You have better quality because you're not, you keep the teams together. Therefore, they build that domain knowledge. They know what they're doing. They're not new to the team all the time. And that's a big deal. Small teams and efficiency. It's easier to communicate in small teams. If you've got a team of 40, who knows who? Probably no one. When you've got a team of 8 or 9 people, it's much easier to communicate. Of course, COVID has made that much more difficult. So it takes an extra effort for the teams to communicate. But if you manage it well, then people will still communicate well. What's another big one? It's faster time to market, because you're only building what the customers want. Therefore, you get to a finished state much faster. If you have failures because you're doing, let's say, 2-week sprints, you find out about your failure every 2 weeks. You can fix it. In waterfall, what traditionally happens is you get to the end, you do all the testing. It's 9 months later, 8 months later, and I've got a bug. Well, the person who wrote that piece of code left the company because contractor, they're done, can't get hold of them. Who knows what's going on? So it gets really difficult to fix bugs. Okay, so let's go into the customer piece. So agile organizations, and one of the things I've worked on a lot for certainly the last 8 years, is how you feed agile. When I say feed agile, it's how does a product management group, the people who are in charge of the product, whether it's an internal product or an external product, how do they feed the agile beast? Do they really have real data, or is it some vice president telling them that, oh no, I want a green one, when the customer really wants a red one? And the data shows that, that's what the customer wants, is a red one. But, so often in the waterfall world, you have the requirements gathered, 6 or 7 months before you even start writing code. And that in today's world tends to get out of date does get out of date really fast. So listen to the customers all the time, not just one time. Keep on listening to them and build what they want. With Agile in the sprint environment, in Scrum, and also in Kanban, but you get frequent feedback. So you're always adjusting to build what that customer wants. So you've got those multiple touch points and interaction with your customer. And the problem with waterfall is you usually have one touch point when you launch the product. So you've been working on it for a year, maybe a year and a half. You get to launch it, and the product and the customers go, not really, not so much. I don't really like that. It's out of date, all kinds of stuff. So you're always challenged with that single touch point. With Agile, you've got multiple touch points throughout the life cycle of the product. And most of all, at the end of, when you do your releases, and there are multiple releases in Agile, it's not just one release. In real Agile, what you get is you get customers who are really happy about what happens. And that's not always the case with waterfall. So happy customers mean people who participate, it's people who buy things, people who engage with your application. They make it more profitable at the end of the day. For whatever reason you're building it, whether it's help desk, whether internal help desk, whether it's a web app where customers buy stuff or they do research or whatever they're doing, they're going to be happier with your product, which immediately affects the revenue. So just a quick picture of what the whole customer thinks about. You'll get this slide, you'll get these slides, you'll get this whole presentation if you want to download it. Plus, of course, this is recorded. So you'll have all this stuff just as sort of a memory jog. And this one comes from the Agile Manifesto. So let's look at the business side of things, right? We'll move away from the software side of things and customers. But, when you're running a business today, you need to be fast. You can't wait for your competitors, as I watch tons of companies do. Why is Amazon so successful? Is because they release every day. They actually release hundreds of times a day. And they are able to track exactly how their customers feel about it. So getting to what we call a minimum viable product and a minimum marketable product, those are two things that are really important. And your product group should be able to decide what that MVP is from customer data. What does it mean? And be able to adjust. So from the lean background that Agile comes from, we look at the sprints. They're small, they're safe investments, and they can be delivered quickly, right? So you should be releasing, if you're doing good Agile, you should be releasing preferably during the sprint because something's ready to release. But also, it's okay to release after every sprint. So you release every couple of weeks, you find out what the customer wants, you find out whether it's not so good or it's great, move on. Stakeholders, they're everybody who's got any kind of interest in software, whether it's the CFO of the organization who's giving you the money to build it, whether it's the end user, the internal customer, the help desk who has to answer all the calls if the product doesn't work really well. That's important. In the agile way of doing things, the stakeholders are always involved. So we listen to everybody, right? We listen to sort of that big, broad, organic environment that, makes up a business. And in listening to them, their feedback is, incorporated in what you build. And by doing that, you're ensuring you've got value, right? Because we measure value, not, lines of code or something like that. We're trying to, get what's the customer value, and that's, a key point. If you're not measuring customer value, then, there's something wrong, because if you're just doing, lines of code and this piece is finished and this piece is finished and this piece is finished without, referring to your customer, a kind of a lost cause these days. So organizational transparency is a big piece as well. A lot of people say, well, Agile is just, they change their minds all the time. They don't have a schedule, blah, 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 blah. All the sort of lots of criticism comes out. Not true. If the leadership and the management understands how to measure Agile, it's very transparent. You can go and look at the Jira board. You can look at the stories. You can go and look at the board. You can see what the WIP, the work in progress is. You can see how many bugs they've got. You can see all that stuff. It's all available to anybody who wants to see it. Unlike waterfall, where kind of you end up with a bunch of PowerPoints and you never actually get to look at Microsoft project because, oh, well, you don't have a license, so you can't see it. Jira and those things, you can see that stuff. One of the big things in Agile is the honesty. We all work towards a common goal, and that's what we, set out to achieve. Political landscape gets lower because we don't have this hierarchy anymore. We take the hierarchy out of the organization, and there's no longer a senior developer and a junior developer and a tester and all this other stuff. All that disappears. We're all on a team. We're all developers. You don't have testers anymore. You don't have BAs anymore. That all kind of disappears. So that hierarchy disappears. Open office is another piece which is really important. Okay, let's go. So there's a little piece on transparency, which should explain a lot, just as a picture, because pictures are good. Okay, this is a bit wordy. I'm not going to talk about all of it, but I'm going to pick out high points for you.
Hey, Richard, can I cut you off for 1 second? Because these are some great benefits. We had a question coming in, and you're talking about some of the benefits of going Agile. But one of the questions is there truly such thing as hybrid Agile? And it seems like a lot of customers are looking for that waterfall Agile mix. They're picking and choosing. And what is the danger of that? Or is there? And sort of how does that work?
Okay, so I'll give you the quick answer. And the quick answer is no, it doesn't work. But I'll give you a little explanation of that. So if you try to bake an apple pie, right? You have a recipe of things, and you've got apples, and you've got sugar, and you've got flour, and you need a pan to cook it in, and you need an oven and all that other stuff. So if you leave out the oven, not going to be very successful a very successful apple pie. If you leave out the apples, it's not going to be that successful either. So Agile is a holistic environment that depends upon all the pieces being done right. It's actually more difficult to do good Agile than it is to do good waterfall. Although I don't believe there is good waterfall. I've personally never seen it, and I've been around a long time. So good Agile takes all the components, and it's difficult to do. So anybody who tells you Agile is easy, oh, I just stand up a Scrum team, I find 9 people, I put them in a room, and we write a whole bunch of stories. Bunch of rubbish. So that's the.
I always imagined that sort of a hybrid approach would have additional redundancies because you've got separate functions doing the same things that end up costing more, lasting longer, and then people are saying, well, Agile really doesn't work because of this, but of course, they're just making it harder for themselves, right?
Yeah, it creates a lot of redundancy. You have, I've seen hybrid Agile where they still have a PMO, and the project managers are asking people for dates and stuff like that, which they've already got, because if they went to the big room or the PI planning, which plans out 6 sprints at a time, so it takes about 12 weeks or even a quarter, they would have seen what it is, but they still want to do the Gantt chart, which is a complete waste of time, because you've already got your sprints laid out, which features are going in which sprint, all that good stuff. So there's a lot of redundancy in that. Then they do resource planning. Of course, we don't talk about resources in Agile, we talk about people, because guess what? Agile is about people, right? People write code, resources don't write code. Not that I know. Anyway, so I hope that answers the question. Let's go back to this one. So another thing from Standish, 45% of the features built in waterfall projects that are developed internally never get used. So if you ever used Microsoft Excel or seen the study on Microsoft Excel, actually the Office suite, there's in Excel, I believe it's something like 8% or 6%, I don't remember exactly what it is, of the product actually gets used by most people. So Microsoft spent a lot of money developing a lot of stuff that never gets used. Don't think that's a good, you wouldn't do that with your money. You shouldn't be doing it with the organization's money. In waterfall projects, the defects actually don't come out until you get into testing and integration. And that puts the whole budget of your project at risk. So that's millions of dollars usually. And that's a big thing that Agile avoids, right? So, waterfall guys talk about risk management, all this kind of stuff. No, they don't know the risks because they haven't tested it. With Agile teams, we test because we do things like test-driven development, behavioral-driven development. And basically, you never have more than 2 weeks of the product at risk because you're testing it, all the time you're testing. So you might have tens of thousands of dollars as opposed to millions of dollars at risk. And that, that's a big deal, especially to, the CFO when he's looking at, how he's going to depreciate all this stuff and does he have to write it off? I was at companies where we wrote off millions of dollars on projects that failed. Millions. In Agile, you never get to that point because, every 2 weeks how well you've done. PMO overhead. I've been at organizations where 25% or more of the project cost is tied up in the PMO. In Agile, you're looking at, maybe 5 to 10%. Anyway, next slide. And this is again finance. Here's another thing from the Money Pit by the Standish Group. It shows you the FAT, as they call it, which is a waterfall project and on a lean project. Nice numbers for the lean costs. So as a finance person, you should be really interested in this. It's going to save you money. Okay, technical management. I think I've gone the wrong way. Apologize. There we go. From the technical management's standpoint, you get better code. You create because you keep the teams together. You get better domain knowledge. So people really know what they're doing. They're not just around for 3 weeks. And they fill in a gap and they write some code and off they go and do something else. And it's not sort of that holistic view of a team of people working together. Sorry, I did it again. Okay. You have less PMO overhead, so you can manage your budgets better. You have fewer meetings, and there's more time for real work, and it increases the ROI in developer upskilling because they stay longer. So that's another piece. Then this is something I put together about 3 years ago when I was at a big organization and I was thinking about all the meetings that developers get invited to. And if in a real Agile world, a developer, the guy who writes the code, he actually produces the product, should only have to go to these meetings. So at the end of the day, in a 2-week sprint, he's only going to 8.25 hours of meetings. And if they're doing an 80-hour, if they're doing a 40-hour week, so 80 hours for 2 weeks, they got 71.75 hours to do work. None of the status meetings where they sit there doing email until they're asked to do something, like everybody does in status meetings. You don't have all those, useless meetings that create no customer value. And let's open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Richard, I had one more come through.
Yeah.
Within an Agile organization, I would imagine there's some positions that will be eliminated. Is manual tester one of those? Does manual testing go away? Are there other roles that would cease to exist or need to be repurposed once you go full Agile?
So I've been in environments where we've, especially with QA people are usually pretty smart people. And what we end up doing is training the QA people to write code. And then the QA people will train developers how to test stuff. Plus you go to test automation. So, it all changes that world quite dramatically. But, a lot of test people make really good coders because they've got that kind of way of thinking about, how do I test this? How do I write the code so that it tests well, all that kind of stuff. So it's good. Test-driven development, that's what it's all about.
What about the business analyst? Is that something that sort of evolved into a product role, or?
BAs sometimes, I've had at Fidelity, we converted a lot of BAs to product owners, and they did really well. There were a few, of course, who didn't, but that's like any business transformation. There are people who don't, so you find other places in the organization for them, and it usually works out. At Fidelity, we actually lost very few people in the initial conversion over to Agile. It's quite interesting because people were terrified, and like anything, it's a natural human reaction. But it didn't work out to be bad for the great majority of people.
And actually, a follow-up question to that: is it critical that the product owner then sits on the business side, or can the product owner still be part of technology?
It's better if the product owner is part of the product group. Now, it depends where that is. If it's if it's internal technology, then perhaps the product owner will sit in the that group of people who develop internal applications, whatever you want to call that. It might be the IT group, it might be, whatever it's called. Which in
that case, it's essentially the business, the product group.
Yeah, essentially a product owner should be, if you're developing for external customers, they should be part of the product management environment, in my opinion. There are other people who disagree with me. That's allowed, but I think they should be part of product management.
Well, I've learned to trust your opinion, Richard, so we'll go with it. It is 1 o'clock on the dot, so we will wrap up. Guys, I appreciate your time today, and Richard, thank you for doing this. There will be a recording that's going to go out, and we'll send that out to everybody that registered. Richard will also get the PDF to us, so we can send that out as well. My email is up on the screen. If you have any other questions, shoot me an email, and we can certainly get Richard to answer the questions, or we can arrange a consultation. And anything else, give me a shout. Otherwise, guys, enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for coming.
Seriously, if you have a question, email Nate, and I'll give you as good an answer as I can. And if you need to set up some time with me, I'd happy to do that as well.
Awesome.
Thank you, Richard.
Guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.